What happens when a single reckless night leads to the end of everything I thought I controlled? How could one impulsive decision at a crowded club turn into a legal order in my hands by morning? The moment I received that envelope, I realized my husband wasn't the villain. He was the judge, and the verdict had already arrived. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The bass thumped through my chest as I pushed through the crowded dance floor, my red dress clinging to curves I'd forgotten I had. At 32, I felt invisible most days, just another office administrator shuffling papers and answering phones. But tonight I was alive again. Another cosmopolitan. Rafe's voice cut through the music as he leaned across the bar, his dark eyes locked on mine. 29 and confident in that effortless way that made my stomach flutter, he'd been flirting with me all evening. I shouldn't, I said, but my hand was already reaching for the glass. My husband's probably wondering where I am. Rafe's smile widened. What he doesn't know won't hurt him, right? The drink burned sweet down my throat as I glanced at my phone. 3 missed calls from Jonas. I silenced it and slipped it back into my purse. Dance with me, Rafe said, coming around the bar as another bartender took over. His hand found mine before I could protest, pulling me onto the crowded floor where bodies pressed together in the dim light. I should have said no. Should have called a cab and gone home to my quiet apartment where Jonas was probably grading papers in his study, glasses perched on his nose, in that way that used to make me smile. Should have remembered that I was Zelia Vole, married mother of 6-year-old Mila, not some single woman free to dance with handsome strangers. But the music was loud, the drinks were strong, and Rafe's hands on my waist made me feel 22 again. You're beautiful, he whispered against my ear, and I believed him. When was the last time Jonas had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd looked at me like I was something precious instead of just another responsibility? The hours blurred together in a haze of laughter, dancing, and stolen kisses in dark corners. When Rafe suggested we go back to his place, I didn't even hesitate. Just for a little while, I told myself as we stumbled out into the cool night air. Just to feel alive again. His apartment was small but clean, with exposed brick walls and windows overlooking the city lights. We barely made it through the door before his hands were in my hair, his mouth on mine, and I was drowning in the thrill of being wanted. I didn't think about Jonas sleeping alone in our bed, didn't think about Mila's drawing stuck to our refrigerator, a stick figure, family holding hands under a rainbow. Didn't think about the promises I'd made 8 years ago in a church full of flowers and hope. I only thought about myself, about feeling desired and reckless and free. When I finally crept through my front door at 5:30 in the morning, the apartment was silent. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I tiptoed toward the bedroom, praying Jonas was still asleep. He wasn't. He sat at the kitchen table in his pajamas, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, watching me with eyes I couldn't read. Long night? His voice was calm, which somehow made it worse than if he'd been shouting. The girls wanted to keep dancing, I lied, smoothing down my wrinkled dress. You know how it is. Jonas nodded slowly, his gaze taking in my smudged makeup, my disheveled hair, the way I couldn't quite meet his eyes. I called your sister. She said you left the restaurant at 9. My heart hammered against my ribs. We went to another place after, a club downtown. I see. He took a sip of coffee, still watching me. Mila was asking for you. She had a nightmare. Guilt twisted in my stomach. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. He stood, rinsing his mug in the sink with careful, deliberate movements. I'm going to shower before work. As he walked past me toward the bedroom, I caught a whiff of his familiar scent, soap and coffee, and the faint smell of chalk from his classroom. It made my chest ache in a way I didn't want to examine. Jonas, I called after him. He paused in the doorway but didn't turn around. Are we okay? For a long moment he was silent. Then, I don't know, Zelia. Are we? The bathroom door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the weight of what I'd done pressing down on my shoulders. But instead of remorse, I felt something else, a strange mixture of defiance and exhilaration. I was tired of being taken for granted, tired of being the responsible wife and mother who never did anything exciting. If Jonas couldn't appreciate what he had, maybe it was time he learned what he could lose. I was reaching for my phone to text Rafe when I noticed something odd. A calendar alert had popped up on the home screen. Consultation 10:30 a.m. JV. I frowned. Jonas never put personal appointments on the shared calendar. And what kind of consultation? The shower was still running as I grabbed a cup of coffee and tried to push away the nagging feeling that something had shifted in the careful balance of our marriage, something I might not be able to control. "Girl, you look like you got hit by a truck," laughed my coworker Brenda as I stumbled into the office Monday morning, designer sunglasses hiding my bloodshot eyes. "Thanks for the confidence boost," I muttered, collapsing into my desk chair and immediately reaching for the coffee pot. The weekend had been tense. Jonas had been polite but distant, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of his time either with Mila or locked in his study. When I'd asked about the mysterious calendar appointment, he'd simply said it was nothing important and changed the subject. Seriously though, what happened? You disappeared from the group chat after Friday night. Brenda perched on the edge of my desk, her curiosity obvious. I forced a smile. "Just had too much fun, you know. Sometimes a girl needs to let loose." "Amen to that. Your husband giving you grief about it?" "A little." I lowered my voice conspiratorially. "He's being all jealous and suspicious. It's honestly kind of pathetic." Brenda's eyes widened with interest. "Jealous? What's he jealous of?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Rafe. "Had an amazing time Friday. When can I see you again?" A thrill shot through me as I quickly typed back, "Soon. I'll figure something out. Zelia." The sharp voice of my supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, cut through my thoughts. "Could I see you in my office, please?" My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral as I followed her down the hall. Mrs. Patterson was in her 50s, all business suits and stern expressions, the kind of woman who tolerated no nonsense. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. "I wanted to discuss something that's come to my attention." "Of course. What can I help you with?" Mrs. Patterson pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. My blood turned to ice. It was blurry and taken from across a crowded room, but it was unmistakably me at the club, Rafe's arms wrapped around me as we danced. "This was posted on social media by someone who recognized you. It's been shared quite a bit over the weekend." Her voice was carefully neutral. "I want to be clear that your personal life is your business, but when it affects the office's reputation..." "Mrs. Patterson, I can explain." She held up a hand. "I'm not asking for explanations. I'm simply reminding you that as representatives of this company, we're expected to maintain certain standards of conduct. Consider this a friendly warning." I nodded, my face burning with humiliation. "It won't happen again." "I hope not." She leaned back in her chair. "You're a good employee, Zelia. Don't let poor judgment derail your career." The walk back to my desk felt like a mile. Brenda was waiting with barely contained excitement. "What was that about?" she whispered. "Nothing, just a scheduling issue." I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the photo. Instead, I threw myself into work, trying to ignore the curious glances from my coworkers. But by lunch, it was clear the story had spread. Conversation stopped when I walked by. People huddled around computers, whispering and giggling. When I went to heat up my sandwich in the break room, the chatter died instantly. "So," said Janet from accounting, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "how's Jonas handling your new social life?" "I don't know what you mean," I replied coldly. "Oh, come on. We all saw the picture. You looked like you were having quite the time with that young man." The other women in the room exchanged knowing looks. I felt my temper flare. My husband trusts me completely, I lied. Unlike some people, we don't feel the need to police each other's every move. A healthy marriage includes independence and trust. Of course, Janet said, but her smirk suggested she didn't buy it for a second. I escaped to my car for lunch, calling my brother Nate for moral support. Zelia, how's my favorite sister? Your only sister, I reminded him, trying to keep my voice light. And I'm okay, just dealing with some drama. What kind of drama? I told him about the photo, carefully framing it as innocent fun that people were blowing out of proportion. You know how gossips are. They see a married woman talking to another man and immediately assume the worst. Nate chuckled. People need to get lives. You're allowed to have friends, married or not. Jonas isn't worried about it, is he? He's being a little weird about it, I admitted. Quiet and moody. Honestly, it's like he doesn't trust me at all. That's rough. Marriage shouldn't be a prison, you know. You're still your own person. His support made me feel better, more justified in my choices. Exactly. I'm not doing anything wrong. Of course not. And if Jonas can't handle you having a social life, that's his problem to work through. After we hung up, I felt more confident. So what if people were talking? I hadn't done anything truly wrong. Dancing with someone wasn't a crime. The kiss? Well, that was nobody's business but mine. But when I got home that evening, I found Jonas in his study with the door locked. I could hear him on the phone, his voice too low to make out words. Daddy's working, Mila said sadly when I asked where he was. She was coloring at the kitchen table, her small face scrunched in concentration. He said not to bother him. I studied her drawing, another family picture, but this one was different. The stick figures weren't holding hands. The mommy figure stood apart from the daddy and little girl, separated by what looked like a dark scribble. "What's this part, sweetheart?" I asked, pointing to the scribble. "A wall," Mila said without looking up. "Sometimes people need walls." A chill ran down my spine. Why would they need walls? She shrugged, still coloring. To keep the sad out, or the mad. Before I could ask more questions, Jonas emerged from his study, slipping his phone into his pocket. He looked tired, older somehow than he had just a few days ago. "How was work?" he asked, but there was something formal in his tone, like he was talking to a stranger. "Fine," I said, watching his face for any sign of what he might know. "Yours?" "The same." He moved to the refrigerator, studying its contents with more attention than they deserved. "I need to run some errands tomorrow after school. I'll pick up Mila." "What kind of errands?" "Just things that need taking care of." His voice was maddeningly calm. "Nothing you need to worry about." That night, as we lay in bed with careful space between us, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when everything had become so complicated. Jonas's breathing was too even, too controlled. He was awake, I knew, but pretending to sleep. My phone buzzed softly with another text from Rafe. "Can't stop thinking about Friday night. You're incredible. I should have deleted it, should have blocked his number, and focused on fixing whatever was broken in my marriage. Instead, I found myself typing back, I can't stop thinking about it either." As I finally drifted off to sleep, I didn't notice Jonas quietly getting up and walking to his study, or the soft sound of his laptop opening in the darkness. "Family dinner at Romano's tonight," my mother announced over the phone Tuesday afternoon. "Your father's been craving their lasagna, and we haven't all been together in weeks." I glanced at my calendar, already dreading the evening. "Mom, I'm not sure tonight's the best." "Nonsense. Jonas already said yes when I called him. 7 o'clock sharp. And bring Mila. You know how much she loves their breadsticks." The line went dead before I could protest further. I sank back in my office chair, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. The last thing I needed was a family gathering when things with Jonas were already strained. But maybe it would help. Maybe being around family would remind us both of what we had together, what we stood to lose. Romano's was crowded and loud, filled with the sounds of clinking glasses and animated conversation. We'd been coming here for family dinners since Jonas and I first started dating. It held memories of happier times. My parents were already seated when we arrived, along with Jonas's sister Lydia and my brother Nate. Mila immediately ran to my father, climbing onto his lap with a giggle. "There's my best girl," Dad said, kissing the top of her head. "How's school?" As Mila chatted about her day, I noticed the way Jonas hung back slightly, his posture tense. Lydia, a sharp-tongued nurse who'd never been shy about speaking her mind, watched me with obvious disapproval. "You look tired, Zelia," she said as we settled into our seats. "Late nights catching up with you." I forced a smile. "Just busy with work. You know how it is." "I'm sure." Her tone suggested she knew exactly what I'd been busy with. Mum, oblivious to the tension, launched into her usual stream of family updates and neighborhood gossip. Dad shared stories from his hardware store, making Mila laugh with his animated impressions of difficult customers. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Then Nate's phone buzzed. "Oh, wow," he said, staring at his screen. "Zelia, you're famous." My blood turned cold. "What do you mean?" He turned his phone toward me, showing a Facebook post. It was the same blurry club photo, but now it had dozens of shares and comments. The caption read, "Spotted at downtown club. Isn't this Jonas Voll's wife?" The table fell silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, could see the shock on my parents' faces and the hurt in Jonas's. "It's not what it looks like," I said quickly, my voice too loud for the intimate setting. "I was just dancing. It's completely innocent." "Dancing?" Lydia's voice was ice cold. "Is that what we're calling it now?" "Lydia," Jonas said quietly, but she ignored him. "No, I'm not going to sit here and watch you humiliate my brother." She turned to face me fully, her eyes blazing. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? What this is doing to his reputation at school?" "People need to mind their own business," I snapped back, feeling cornered and defensive. "I'm allowed to have friends. I'm allowed to go out and have fun. Marriage isn't supposed to be a prison sentence." "Friends?" Lydia laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call men who grope you on dance floors?" "That's enough," Mom said firmly, glancing nervously at Mila, who was watching the adults with wide, confused eyes. But I was too angry to stop. "You know what your problem is, Lydia? You're jealous. You're 40 years old and alone, so you can't stand to see someone else enjoying their life." "Zelia," Dad's voice cracked like a whip. "Apologize to your sister-in-law right now." "She's 38, actually," Jonas said quietly, "and she's alone by choice. Unlike some people, she doesn't need constant validation from strangers." The words hit like a slap. I stared at my husband, seeing something cold and unfamiliar in his expression. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I think you know exactly what it means." He was still speaking in that terrifyingly calm voice. "The question is whether you care enough to do something about it." "I don't have to listen to this," I said, standing abruptly. "I came here for a nice family dinner, not an intervention." "Sit down," Mom commanded. "We're going to discuss this like adults." "There's nothing to discuss. I went dancing with some friends. I talked to people. I had fun for the first time in months. If that makes me a terrible person, then I guess I'm guilty as charged." I was aware that my voice was carrying, that other diners were starting to stare, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. "You want to know the truth?" I continued, my voice getting louder. "Yes, I danced with someone. Yes, I enjoyed the attention. Because when's the last time any of you made me feel special? When's the last time my own husband looked at me like I was something more than just another obligation?" Jonas flinched, as if I'd struck him, but he didn't respond. Instead, he quietly took out his phone and, to my shock, began recording. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Documenting," he said simply. "Documenting what?" "Your choices." The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning I didn't want to understand. Around the table, my family sat in stunned silence. Mila had tears in her eyes, clutching her grandfather's hand. "Mommy," she whispered, "why are you yelling?" The question broke something inside me. I looked around the table at the faces I loved. My parents' disappointment, Nate's confusion, Lydia's disgust, and worst of all, my daughter's fear. "I'm sorry," I said, but the words felt hollow. "I didn't mean to upset everyone. I need some air." I walked quickly toward the restaurant's entrance, past tables full of families enjoying normal dinners without drama or accusations. Outside, I leaned against the brick wall and tried to catch my breath. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Legal." My hands shook as I stared at the message. Legal? What could that possibly mean? When I returned to the table, the mood was somber. Jonas was helping Mila color on her kids' menu, speaking to her in gentle tones. The rest of the family made awkward small talk, carefully avoiding my eyes. "Ready to go?" Jonas asked when I sat down, not looking at me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The ride home was silent except for Mila's soft humming in the back seat. When we pulled into our parking spot, Jonas finally spoke. "I'll put her to bed tonight." "Jonas, please." His voice was tired, defeated. "Just, please." As I watched him carry our sleepy daughter upstairs, I felt something shift inside me. Not guilt, not yet, but a growing awareness that the game I thought I was playing had rules I didn't understand, and I was losing. The next morning, Jonas was gone before I woke up. No coffee waiting for me, no note, no goodbye kiss, just an empty space in the bed and the lingering scent of his cologne. I found Mila in the kitchen, eating cereal and swinging her legs from the tall chair. "Where's Daddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "He left early," she said without looking up. "He made my lunch and everything." There was something in her tone, a careful neutrality that reminded me uncomfortably of Jonas's recent demeanor. Even my 6-year-old daughter was walking on eggshells around me. Work was a special kind of torture. The photo had made its rounds through the office, and I could feel the judgment radiating from my co-workers. Mrs. Patterson called me into her office again, this time with a written warning about conduct unbecoming of company standards. "I want to be clear," she said, sliding the paper across her desk. "This is your final warning. Any further incidents that reflect poorly on this company will result in immediate termination." I signed the document with trembling hands, my career hanging by a thread because of one night of poor judgment. But the worst part was the silence at home. When Jonas finally returned that evening, he was polite but distant, speaking to me only when necessary, and spending most of his time either with Mila or locked in his study. "What were you doing in there?" I asked when he emerged hours later, looking tired and grim. "Work," he said simply, but I noticed he was carrying a manila folder and his laptop bag. "What kind of work requires you to lock the door?" He paused, studying my face with those calm brown eyes that used to make me feel safe. "The important kind." That night, I lay awake, listening to him breathe beside me, wondering when we'd become strangers sharing a bed. My phone buzzed softly, another text from Rafe, asking when he could see me again. This time, I didn't respond. Thursday brought new humiliations. Someone had shared the club photo in a local Facebook group, and the comments were brutal. "Isn't that the teacher's wife? Poor guy, she's really putting it all out there. Some women have no shame." I deactivated my social media accounts and tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. Every conversation seemed to stop when I approached. Every laugh felt directed at me. When I got home, I found Jonas in his study again, but this time the door was open. He sat at his desk, surrounded by papers, his laptop open, typing with methodical precision. "What's all this?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been pity in his expression. "Just organizing some things," he said, making sure everything's in order. I stepped closer, trying to read the papers on his desk, but he calmly closed the folder and turned his laptop screen away. "Jonas, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Am I?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. That's interesting. What exactly are you scared of? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I didn't want to explore. I'm scared of losing my family, I said finally, and for the first time in days, it felt like the truth. He nodded slowly. That's a reasonable fear. So help me fix this. Tell me what you need from me. I needed honesty, he said quietly. I needed respect. I needed my wife to remember that her choices affect more people than just herself. Needed? Past tense? He didn't answer, just turned back to his computer and resumed typing. Friday morning, I woke up alone again. This time, I decided to investigate. Jonas's study had always been his private space, but we'd never kept secrets from each other before. The door was unlocked, and I slipped inside, feeling like an intruder in my own home. His desk was neat as always, but I noticed several new additions. A small filing cabinet I'd never seen before, a stack of business cards, and a calendar with several appointments marked in his careful handwriting. I opened the filing cabinet, my heart pounding. Inside were folders labeled bank statements, utilities, insurance, and legal. The legal folder was thick, filled with papers I didn't recognize, and printouts from websites about divorce proceedings. My hands shook as I rifled through the documents. There were screenshots of my social media posts, printouts of the club photo, and what looked like a detailed timeline of my activities over the past few weeks. At the bottom of the folder was a USB drive labeled Evidence and a business card for a family law attorney. I sank into Jonas's chair, the weight of what I was seeing finally hitting me. This wasn't just hurt feelings or temporary anger. This was methodical, calculated preparation for something I'd been too blind to see coming. My phone rang, making me jump. It was my mother. "Zelia, honey, we need to talk." "Mom, I can't right now. I just got off the phone with Jonas." Her voice was heavy with disappointment. "He told me what's really been going on." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "The club, the man you've been seeing, the lies, all of it." "He's exaggerating. It's not what you think. Stop." The word came out sharp and final. "Just stop lying to me, to yourself, to everyone who loves you. I raised you better than this." Tears stung my eyes. "Mom, please, I made a mistake, but I can fix it." "Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in defending your choices than taking responsibility for them." "That's not fair." "Fair?" She laughed bitterly. "What's not fair is watching your husband, a good man who's done nothing but love you, have to document his wife's betrayal because he knows no one will believe how bad it's gotten." The line went dead, leaving me alone in Jonas's study with the evidence of my marriage's destruction spread out before me. I tried calling Nate, but it went straight to voicemail. Lydia's number was blocked. Even my closest friends from work seemed to be avoiding me. That evening, Jonas came home with takeout and ate dinner with Mila, while I sat at the table in silence, pushing food around my plate. Our daughter chatted about her day at school, but I noticed she directed most of her conversation toward her father. "Mummy seems sad," she said suddenly, looking at me with those wide, perceptive eyes. "Sometimes grown-ups get sad," Jonas said gently. "But it's not your job to fix it, sweetheart. Your job is just to be a kid." After Mila went to bed, I cornered Jonas in the kitchen. "I found your files," I said. He nodded, unsurprised. "I figured you would eventually." "Is this really what you want? To throw away 8 years of marriage?" "I'm not throwing anything away, Zelia. You already did that." "One mistake." "One mistake." His calm finally cracked, revealing the pain underneath. "Which one?" "Dancing with him, kissing him, going home with him, lying to me about where you were, humiliating me in front of our family, continuing to text him even after you knew I was aware of what happened." I stared at him, shocked by how much he knew. "You thought I was stupid," he continued, his voice gaining strength. You thought I'd just accept whatever story you fed me and be grateful for the scraps of attention you threw my way. But I'm not stupid, Zelia. I'm just done. Jonas, please. I have a meeting tomorrow morning, he said, turning away from me. You'll want to make some calls of your own. As he walked toward the bedroom, I called after him. What kind of meeting? He paused at the doorway, not turning around. The kind that makes things official. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to Jonas breathe, my mind racing through possibilities, scenarios, ways to fix what felt increasingly unfixable. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that legal folder, those carefully organized documents, the cold precision of a man who'd made up his mind. By morning, I was desperate. Jonas, I whispered as he got dressed for work, we need to talk about this. Really talk. He paused in buttoning his shirt, looking at me with those tired eyes. What's left to talk about? Everything. Us, our family, what we're throwing away. I'm not throwing anything away, he said quietly. I'm protecting what's left. What's that supposed to mean? But he was already walking out, leaving me alone with my panic. I called in sick to work and spent the morning pacing our apartment, trying to figure out my next move. I needed allies, needed people who would support me, remind Jonas of what we'd built together. I started with my brother Nate, but when he answered, his voice was different, cooler, more distant than I'd ever heard it. Zelia, how are you holding up? Not great. I think Jonas is really serious about this divorce thing. There was a long pause. Maybe he should be. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Nate, you're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you the truth. You screwed up, Zell. Big time. And instead of owning it and trying to make amends, you've spent the last week making it worse. I made one mistake. Stop saying that. His voice cracked with frustration. It wasn't one mistake. It was a series of choices, bad choices, and now you're dealing with the consequences. So you're abandoning me too? I'm not abandoning you, but I'm not going to enable you either. If you want to fix this, if it can even be fixed, you need to start by being honest. With Jonas, with yourself, with everyone. The line went dead, leaving me more alone than I'd ever felt. Desperate, I called Lydia, hoping to appeal to her sense of family, but she didn't even let me get past hello. If you're calling to justify your behavior, or ask me to talk to Jonas, save your breath, she said coldly. My brother is finally standing up for himself, and I couldn't be prouder. Lydia, please, think about Mila. Think about what a divorce will do to her. I am thinking about Mila. I'm thinking about what it's doing to her, to watch her mother disrespect her father. I'm thinking about what kind of example you're setting. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got bored with your life and decided to blow it up. Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished. Another deadline. Another bridge burned. In desperation, I reached out to my club friends, the women who'd encouraged my night out, who'd told me I deserved to have fun. But their support felt hollow now, their advice shallow. Just deny everything, suggested Carmen. Make him prove it. Get a good lawyer, said Beth. Take him for everything he's worth. Maybe this is for the best, offered Jenna. You deserve someone who appreciates you. None of them understood the gravity of what I was losing. To them, this was just drama, entertainment, a cautionary tale they'd share over drinks. The afternoon brought a new humiliation. Someone had created a social media post about me that had gone viral in our local community. The club photo was paired with a picture of Jonas from the school's website, along with a caption that made me sick to read. I tried to report it, to get it taken down, but the damage was already done. Hundreds of shares, thousands of comments, most of them expressing sympathy for Jonas and disgust for me. When Mila came home from school, she was quieter than usual, clinging to me in a way that broke my heart. "Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" she asked suddenly, looking up at me with those big, serious eyes. "What? No, sweetheart. Why would you ask that? Emma's parents got divorced, and first they stopped talking to each other, and then they stopped sleeping in the same room, and then her daddy moved away. I realized with horror that she'd noticed Jonas sleeping in the guest room the past few nights, noticed the tension, the careful distance we'd been maintaining. Daddy and I are just working through some grown-up problems, I said, pulling her close. But we both love you very much, and that will never change. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her expression, the way she was trying to be brave for my sake. When Jonas came home that evening, he looked different, resolved, almost peaceful in a way that terrified me. How did your meeting go? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Fine, everything's in motion now. What does that mean? He studied my face for a long moment. It means you should probably call a lawyer, Zelia, soon. That night I heard him on the phone in his study, his voice low but audible through the thin walls. Yes, all the documentation is ready, he was saying. Photos, timeline, witnesses, everything you said you'd need. A pause. Tomorrow morning? That's perfect. Yes, I'll be there. Another pause. No, I don't think she suspects. She's been too busy trying to control the narrative to pay attention to what's actually happening. I pressed my ear closer to the door, my heart pounding. The custody arrangement should be straightforward given the circumstances. I have evidence of erratic behavior, public intoxication, inappropriate conduct around the child. My blood turned to ice. Custody arrangement. He wasn't just planning to divorce me, he was planning to take Mila. I know it seems harsh, he continued, but I have to think about what's best for my daughter, and right now, what's best for her is stability. I stumbled back to the bedroom, my mind reeling. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or wounded pride anymore. This was about my entire life, my relationship with my daughter, my future. I grabbed my phone and started typing frantically to Rafe, the only person who might still be on my side. I need to see you, tonight. It's important. His response came quickly. Of course. My place in an hour? For a moment I hesitated. Meeting with Rafe now, when everything was falling apart, would only make things worse. But I was drowning, and he felt like the only lifeline available. I told Jonas I was going to the store and drove to Rafe's apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. He met me at the door with a concerned expression. You look terrible. What's wrong? Everything, I said, collapsing onto his couch. My husband, my family, my job. It's all falling apart. Because of us? I nodded, tears finally coming. He knows about that night. He's been documenting everything, building a case. He's going to divorce me and try to take my daughter. Rafe sat beside me, pulling me close. Hey, it's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. How? How is any of this going to be okay? Maybe it's for the best, he said softly. Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time for a new chapter. I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time how young he was, how little he understood about the life I was losing. A new chapter? Rafe, I have a 6-year-old daughter. I have a career, a home, a family. This isn't some romantic movie where we ride off into the sunset together. He looked hurt. We have something special, don't we? And suddenly I saw it all clearly. The fantasy I'd been living, the delusion that had cost me everything real and valuable in my life. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. Zelia, wait. But I was already out the door, driving home through the dark streets, knowing with horrible certainty that I was too late to fix anything. When I crept back into the apartment, Jonas was waiting in the kitchen, still dressed, his expression unreadable. Stores closed pretty early tonight, he said quietly. I couldn't even summon the energy to lie anymore. Jonas, Don't. He held up a hand. Just don't. I can't take any more tonight. As he walked past me toward the guest room, he paused. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, courthouse steps, he said without turning around. You'll want to be there. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in the kitchen, with the weight of my choices pressing down on me like a physical thing. In 12 hours, my marriage would be officially over. And I had no one to blame but myself. I didn't sleep, couldn't eat. By 9:30 the next morning, I was pacing outside the courthouse, my hands shaking as I clutched a coffee I couldn't drink. I'd called 3 lawyers that morning, but none could see me on such short notice. I was going into whatever this was completely unprepared, completely alone. At exactly 10 o'clock, I saw Jonas walking up the courthouse steps. He wasn't alone. Lydia walked beside him, her expression grim but supportive. Behind them, to my shock, were my own parents, their faces heavy with disappointment. And holding Jonas's hand, looking small and confused in her best dress, was Mila. "What is this?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Why is she here?" Jonas stopped a few feet away from me, his expression calm and resolute. From his briefcase, he pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Zelia Vole," he said formally. "You are being served with a petition for divorce and a request for emergency custody modification." The envelope felt impossibly heavy in my hands. I tore it open with shaking fingers, scanning the legal documents that would end my marriage and, potentially, my relationship with my daughter. "Emergency custody?" I looked up at him in horror. "Jonas, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." His voice was steady, professional. "The court will review evidence of behavior detrimental to the child's welfare, including public intoxication, adultery, and emotional instability." "Emotional instability? I'm not unstable." "Aren't you?" He pulled out his phone and played a recording. It was me from the restaurant, my voice shrill and angry. "I went dancing with someone. Yes, I enjoyed the attention, because when's the last time any of you made me feel special?" I stared at him, recognizing the moment, remembering how out of control I'd felt, how justified my anger had seemed at the time. "You recorded me." "I documented your behavior, yes, just like I documented the photos, the timeline, the lies." His voice remained maddeningly calm. "The court will have a complete picture of the choices you've made." "Mommy," Mila's small voice cut through the legal jargon and adult anger, "are you in trouble?" I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking at the confusion in her eyes. "No, sweetheart, Mommy's not in trouble. This is just grown-up stuff." "But why are you crying?" I hadn't realized I was. I wiped my eyes, trying to smile for her. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're sad, but I'm okay." Jonas gently took Mila's hand. "Grandma and Grandpa are going to take you for ice cream while Mommy and Daddy finish talking, okay?" She nodded, but looked back at me with worry as my parents led her away. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. When we were alone, or as alone as you can be on courthouse steps with lawyers and strangers walking by, I turned to Jonas with desperation. "Please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want." "It's too late for that." "It's never too late. Jonas, I love you. I love our family. I made a terrible mistake, but people make mistakes. That doesn't mean we have to destroy everything." His calm finally cracked. "A mistake is forgetting milk," he said. "What you did was a choice. Then more choices. Lying, blaming me, humiliating our family." I tried to say I was scared. "You were selfish," he cut in, and the word landed like a slap. "You decided your feelings mattered more than your vows, more than your daughter's stability." People were watching. Some recognized me from the viral photos. I whispered that he was humiliating me. "I'm holding you accountable," he said. "There's a difference." Lydia stepped closer, cold-eyed. She said I'd humiliated myself, and Jonas was only making sure there were consequences. I snapped that it was between my husband and me. "Your husband?" Jonas asked quietly. "When did you remember that? Was it when you were dancing with another man? When you went home with him? When you lied to my face the next morning?" Each question hit like a nail. I tried to demand a lawyer, to fight this. "You want," he said almost gently. "That's always been the problem. What you want, when you want it, how you want it. I told him it wasn't fair. He asked if it was fair that he learned about my affair from social media. If it was fair that our daughter had started asking why Mommy wasn't happy anymore. If it was fair that he spent 2 weeks documenting my betrayal because he knew no one would believe how far I'd fallen. I never meant for this, I said. But it happened, he replied. Now we deal with the consequences. I grabbed his arm and begged him to think about Mila. He looked at my hand, then at my face. I am thinking about Mila, he said. She deserves better than watching her mother destroy her family for a few hours of attention. He removed my hand with quiet care. The hearing is next Friday. Use the time to find legal representation. Then he walked away with Lydia, leaving me alone on the courthouse steps with papers that felt heavier than stone. I sat and read them. He'd built a case like a timeline of my choices, club photos, message screenshots, witness statements, even a list of my lies and contradictions. At the bottom, in the custody petition, I saw the words that finally shattered me. Primary custody, supervised visitation, supervised visits. With my own daughter. That was when the truth finally hit. Not that my marriage was ending, but that I'd broken the life I thought was unbreakable. I'd lost the right to be trusted, not as a wife, but as a mother. When I stood to leave, my reflection in the courthouse window looked like a stranger. A woman holding proof of her own collapse, with no one left to blame. Outside, I passed an ice cream shop and saw Mila laughing between my parents, safe and bright and untouched by the adult wreckage. Jonas had been right. She deserved better, and for the first time, I understood the ugliest part of all. Better didn't include me, not as I was. Those papers weren't just legal documents. They were a mirror. Jonas hadn't destroyed our marriage. I had. He was just brave enough to make it official.